What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday to everybody out there in the Service Alliance community. It's Friday. We made it through another week. Got my boy Zach on his way into work this morning. How you doing, bud?
What's up, man? Just another day, another dollar. We got rain for a couple hours, but then we'll be knocking out the roof we're working on. So
There you go. Yeah, it's been rainy off and on here in Virginia all week too, so it's looking a little bit brighter out today. So I'm hoping for clear skies and sunny weather.
love it.
Because that rain, man, that's just I don't know, just it's a little depressing when it's days and days and days of it, as you know,
Oh yeah.
for sure. But it's Freestyle Friday, so if you're watching, feel free to drop your questions, comments, concerns, business struggles, ideas, thoughts, whatever you want. Um, but all week this week, we've been talking about procedures and different things in our businesses. I actually at ASTI did a class on standard operating procedures for your business. And I think it went pretty well for the most part. I'm really into procedures and systems and policies and all that in my own business. I haven't mastered it by far, but I'll tell you what, one of the biggest things that's made a difference in my business is the standard operating procedures that I've put in place and the different policies and things that we've worked on. Um, we got Dr. Dan's better half, Miss Marion Ibsen, in the house. Got to meet her at PSA. What a wonderful lady. It's good to see you. Tell Dr. Dan I said hi. Hopefully he's there watching with you. But yeah, it was awesome meeting her and getting to hang out with Dan. And what an awesome couple. They're just so cool.
Two of
Really
two of
enjoyed
my
it.
two of my favorite people in the whole wide world, man.
For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Like um between her just joyful, sweet spirit and Dr. Dan's he's just awesome. He's just laid back and he's got the greatest beard ever. All of us other bearded brethren just desire to be like Dan. So shout out to them. But I got a verse for us this morning. We're gonna pray up, and then we'll just get into a little bit of talking because I really want to talk about something that I think a lot of business owners overlook when it comes to procedures and policies and systems and all that stuff. And that is your checks and balances for all these things. Because at the end of the day, all this stuff doesn't make any difference if you don't have a way to make sure the stuff that you're delegating is getting done properly. And as I've shared in the past, that's one of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started. I was putting the procedures in place, I was putting the policies in place, I was putting the systems in place, I was putting all these things in place. But what I didn't have in place was the systems of checks and balances where I could go back and make sure these things were getting done right. And you might as well not have them if you don't have those things. I'd say they're a little bit helpful without them, but man, once you get the checks and balances in place, that's where you start to see some actual growth and you can see what's working and what's not. That's the beauty of it. All right, well, I'll pray us up since you're driving, Zach, and we'll get right into this thing. Oh wow, my hair is a mess. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for waking us up. Thank you for my brother Zach jumping on here this morning. Lord, we pray for every business represented within this community that you would bless them. Thank you for Dr. Dan and Marion, Lord, and just what an awesome couple they are. Inspiration to so many of us. And we just ask that you bless them, bless the rest of the Service Alliance community, bless their families, Lord. We pray for those that were affected by this hurricane, that you would be with them, be with their families, be with those that have lost loved ones or are still struggling and going through the thick of it. And we just ask you to continue to guide us in your will each day, and that you would take over this time as we dig into some scripture and dig into more about how to run our businesses, how you would have us run them, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Let's see here. I got my verse all typed out for you guys because I'm all fancy and whatnot. Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. And I was thinking about that verse this morning as I was preparing for this morning grind, and that word diligent. What? Let me ask you this, Zach. What's that word diligent mean to you? And if you're listening, type in the comments. What does the word diligent mean to you?
Man, so this follows right along with that video that I sent to you guys last night in WhatsApp. Um, Diligent, man. It means digging in, doing the work, and continually doing the work. Like there's consistency and diligence, right? It's not just, okay, I'm going to show up today, but then tomorrow I'm not going to show up, and maybe I'll kind of half show up the next day. No, it's you get up and you get after it day after day after day, doing what you're supposed to do. Ooh,
Yep.
love that verse, man. Love it.
Do, doing what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it. And the only way your team and the people around you are going to know what they're supposed to do is how you tell them. You can't have a worker that's going to be diligent in the things that you have for him to do unless you've spelled out what it is. The end of the verse says, as surely as haste leads to poverty. When I think of haste, I think of procrastination. I think of putting things off. Diligence and hastefulness are the exact opposite. I don't know about you guys, but I've always been one of those people in my earlier years that I would put things off all the time. I just put it off until the last minute. And while it did work out for me from time to time, and I think it was either sheer luck or just God's grace or something, but it's not the way to do things. Be diligent in it. Get it done. Stay on top of things. And once you get we've been talking about procedures and we're all about getting those things in place. Once you get those procedures in place, be diligent about staying on top of whatever that task is you're delegating. Because if you just think, oh, I told him how to do it, he's going to do it right or she's going to do it right, how's that usually work out, Zach, in your experience?
Yeah, it doesn't work out. You know, the other thing that I take out of diligence, diligence requires planning, right? We talk about haste being the exact opposite. Haste is just getting out there and doing it and expecting it. So, much like you're talking about, I just told them. I told them. They know what to do. I told them. That's haste, right? Like that's just hurrying up and trying to get through it and going through the motions. Where diligence is actually thought out, it's planning, it's consistency, right? Like, yeah, you have to write it down, you have to put it in paper, you have to continually check up on these things. Whether it's your business plan, your SOPs, teaching your guys, whatever the case is, right? Like, there is some effort and some thought and some planning that has to go into it. I love that.
Absolutely. And I think about it like this: when you go out and you work on an appliance, you have your procedures for fixing that appliance, right? You go out there, you do the repair. Well, once you've done the procedures to fix it, do you just pack your tools up and leave? No. You check to make sure everything was done right. You verify that that repair was done properly. I've done a Samsung heating element. I can't count how many times. But yet every time I do it, every time I make that repair, I make sure that I go in and make sure that the heater's cycling on and off. Check the vent at the end of the repair. Make sure that there's not a venting issue. That it's delegate, but then go back and make sure they're doing it. And that's how it has to be in your processes. In every little part of business, there's opportunity for error. And I'm not telling you to micromanage your team, but the more checks and balances you have in place, the less you have to micromanage them. I don't have to micromanage my team anymore because I have systems of checks and balances that make sure that things get done as much of the way as I want them to do it as possible. We got a couple more people. I got EJ Magic Mike. Go ahead, Zach.
One of the things I was thinking, there's the verse talking about reaping what you sow, right? And that was part of that video that I shared last night with you guys as well. And so many of us think of that, well, like if I put good into the world, then good's going to come back. And if I'm a jerk, then people are going to be jerks to me. The other side of that, though, is it's a business principle, right? What what are we sowing into the ground? Like, what are we sowing into our team? What are we sowing into our business? Because that's what we're going to reap from that, right? Like those rewards that come out after that. If we're just half button through our business and just hoping on a wing and a prayer that it's going to work, we're going to find problems, right? And if we're not setting the example for our team, if we're not being that example of consistency, that example of following the procedures, guess what we're going to reap? People that don't follow the dang procedures. They're looking right at us, and we're going to get back what we put into that. So it is
That is
important.
such a great point, man, because I'll be transparent with you guys. When I first started getting my systems and procedures in place, I was the biggest culprit of people who didn't follow them. And I noticed within my team, especially with the younger guys, they were of the attitude, well, TK's not doing it. Why do I have to do it? If TK's not doing it this way, why do I have to do it this way? So I made a choice, and I'm not perfect. I make mistakes just like everybody else, but I made a choice to lead by example. I said, I got to do better about this. These guys are watching me because, when you're a one-man show, it's just you and the customer. And you know how to do the things that you do. You know how to get it done, make it right. But once you decide to start to grow your business and you have other people doing it, you have to be that example. And not only that, but you have to be the one that puts those systems and checks and balances, because that's what's going to ensure consistency. That's what's going to ensure compliance. Not that you put the procedure out there, but that you put a system of checks and balance, whether it's through your KPIs, whether it's through a flow chart, whether it's through some sort of checklist. I'm big on checklists. Everybody's got their own way of doing things, but I love it when I have something the guys can check off the box that it's done, and then Beth goes in and verifies that they did whatever that thing was, whether it was putting in the notes in the job or invoicing the job. There's checks and balances for each little thing that we do. And it's been a game changer for my business. I know. I don't really sit there and micromanage my team because we've gotten to a point where things are running so smoothly. But another thing I want to touch on, and Zach, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. When problems do arise, which they will, when problems do arise, one of the first things that I do as a business owner is I say, what part of our systems and operating procedures failed? Where did we fail? What can we do better? What policy, procedure, or system can we put in place so that this doesn't happen again? What's your thoughts on that, Zach? Because I know that in your line of work, there's got to be, you know, new issues, new problems that arise where you're like, all right, what can I do to change this?
Well, and the other piece of it is if we have a system in place, what part of it's broken? What do we need to modify? What do we need to, you know, like where did it go off the rails? And you got to monitor what you're doing, right? That's where the KPIs on the other sides of that are coming in. Um, if you're not monitoring, you can't make those adjustments. So yeah, it is critical to make those assessments, and sometimes it takes an outside set of eyes to see, like, hey, this part of it, while it seems like it's going okay, because I think that's the more deadly one, right? Is like on the surface, it seems like everything's going fine, and our systems are working, and we're doing all the things, and it's fine, right? Um, but but the reality is there's trouble brewing underneath the surface, you know, and and it those are the ones that take an outside set of eyes. I walked through something with EJ, and I looked at him and I said, "Man, you got a process problem." And he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Why did that recall happen and then happen again?" I said, "That tells me you got a process problem." I said, "What's your process for verifying these appliances? This particular appliance. What is your process for that?" And he goes, "Well, I don't. I mean, we do this, and I say to check that, and whatever." And he went through it, and I'm like, "Well, you're you don't have the verification fully flushed out. Like, you just need to expand that process a little bit more and put some accountability in, so that the guys are actually doing that every single time, because they're doing it
Yeah,
90% of the time, but they're not doing it 100% of the time, which is what's causing the process, right?"
absolutely. And that
And that
word accountability, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it starts with the leader, because I asked EJ point blank, "Are you doing that every time?" And he goes, "Well, no." I go, "Well, then you're the first one not following process, man. You ain't gonna fix it until you fix you." You know what I mean? And so, definitely into the accountability and leading by example there.
Yeah, and I think that word that you just used, accountability, is the if we could pick a word that goes hand in hand with what we're talking about here, that's what it is. It's accountability. Hey, this is the way I want things done, and here's the way that your standard operating procedures are going to show your team how you want the things done. But your systems of checks and balances, that's the accountability piece. That's the piece that people forget so much. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's your bookkeeper. I don't care if it's your CSR, your parts manager, your tech. I don't care if it's the guy that comes once a month to clean your office. If you have someone like that, have systems of accountability. It's like having systems for your systems, and always be reviewing and allowing these processes and procedures to evolve. Because just like um when I talked about business planning in the very early days of making YouTube videos and stuff, I mentioned that your business plan is going to evolve. And a lot of people, we just recently did a mastermind on business planning. A lot of people think business planning is something you do once and it's done. Oh, I'm gonna write out a business plan and this is my plan. Man, my plan has changed so much in the last 10 to 11 years. I had all these grandiose plans in the beginning of having three different areas and 30 texts. Man, I don't want any of that stuff anymore. I go to these conventions, man, and Zach, I'm sure you're the same way because you've been in the same boat I'm in. I go to these conventions and I see these guys with 20, 30 technicians, and I'm just thinking, man, that guy running that company is either miserable or he is like the saint of saints and just a miraculous guy. I shared the story that I was hanging out with some of the guys in the around the fire pit, and these guys came from a big company, like 15, 20 techs, and they were such awesome dudes. and they had such great things to say about their company, about their boss, about their peers that they worked with. And I was like, man, I never got to meet the guy, but I was like, man, I really want to meet their boss because he's doing it right. But when I look at that stuff, all I get is anxiety, like, oh gosh, I don't want that.
You, you know who else is doing it right, man? And he has quite a few techs out there. I think he's I'm fairly certain he's about the same level as Action, our buddy Doug Shear, and Jay, and it's Mike Callahan. He's
Mm-hmm.
got quite a few out there, and we talk about accountability. You know who holds Mike accountable? It's his wife and his daughter. They're in the office, they're watching the numbers, they're watching the KPIs, they're watching the stuff because that's not Mike's gifting, right? That's not his skill set. But Kate or his wife can go up to him and go, "Listen, hey, you gotta, this guy's having a problem. You know, what do you mean, right?" And they go, "We don't know, but the numbers are here, and they were here, and something's going on there. You need to go and talk with this guy." And so, even as business owners, the companies that get large, the managers, the owner, they have someone holding them accountable and going, "Hey, listen, you got this going on. You should probably go and address it," right? So even as leaders, we need accountability. So
Absolutely.
that's how you avoid the anxiety. If that's the direction you want to go, you got to make sure you have people holding you accountable once you get to that scale or as you're getting to that scale.
Yeah, and one of the and I don't know Mr. Callahan very well. I met him at PSA. We had messaged a little bit, but he seems so laid back and just go with the flow. Like I that's the thing that I really admired. And I could be totally wrong. Like he might be a complete stress ball during the week and his wife and daughter could correct me, but he seems so laid back, like just chilling, like, and
Yep.
that's what I aspire to be. No matter how big my company gets, I don't really want to be huge anymore. But no matter how big it gets, I want to be able to enjoy being a business owner. I know there's going to be times of stress. I know there's going to be times of frustration, but the thing that I've learned is that the more diligent, we're going to keep using that word because we're driving that into your heads this morning. The more diligent we are with putting these things in place, the more laid back and chill you can be because you know you have the policies and checks and balances in place. You have that accountability. You have your team on the same page. You have the I's dotted and the T's crossed. And not only that, but you have someone going back and make sure that that dot and that T is crossed. And at the end of the day, you can sleep better knowing that you got a good team of guys. And any of you that have had bad team members, you know that one bad team member can ruin the whole operation, can just mess up everything. Zach knows it. I know it. We've all had them. Um, but
Oh yeah.
it can be frustrating. But I'll say this: if you're one of those people out there that has someone on your team that's bringing the whole team down, train them up or train them out. Either they either get right or they get gone. That's the only two options. Because I know from personal experience, and Zach does too, that one person that's not following the procedures, that's not doing things the way that they're going just supposed to be done, it'll tear down your whole team. And I don't want to be negative about it, but you're better off just canning their ass. Get rid of them. Rip the band-aid off and be done. Because so much money will be lost, so much time will be wasted, and so much unneeded frustration will be had. I'm not saying don't give them any chances, but you need to have a whatever your policy is, 3 strikes and you're out, 2 strikes and you're out. Do you have, ask yourself this, do I have a policy for when my employees do something wrong? Do you have a disciplinary action form? Do you have a disciplinary action plan? We have on the servicealliancegroup.com, we have what's called a disciplinary action plan. And when someone in my company, I downloaded it, recreated it all for my company. And if something happens in my company, I haven't had to use one in over a year now, thank God. But when something happens in my company, I go in and I put a plan together to say, all right, if you don't do X, Y, and Z by this time frame, this is the repercussions for that. And you know, you might think it's silly or think it's overdoing things, but it's not, because you're setting the expectations just like you set the expectations with your customers through your website and your CSRs script and all those things. You have to set the expectations with your employees when they are not following the procedures and doing the things the way you want them done. But and there's a fine line too, because you want people to have their own individuality, but you also want things to get done a certain way. And that's been a struggle for me, but you gotta stick to your guns, and you gotta be willing to have those hard conversations with these guys. And when they're not willing to change, just get rid of their asses. It's not worth the headache.
Yeah, you know how Mike can be so about things is because he trusts the process and he has that accountability with his wife and Kate, right? Like they will straight up he will tell you that he is the first person that is that old school boot in the ass mentality, like just do it. Like just do it. But because he knows and has learned the importance of the process, and the importance of follow through, and the importance of when you have a cancer in the team, you gotta either heal it or get rid of it, right? Um, if you continue to follow that, you're gonna find success in that, right? So yeah, it's critical. And the servicealliancegroup.com, those templates that TK is talking about, you're an all access member. You have access to download them, modify them so that they fit your company, right? Like that's why we created it. It a lot of that was created out of pain.
Yeah,
Right? It's just it's not worth having to, continually fight over things like that, right? So,
absolutely. Yep.
uh, yeah, man. I I think for me the biggest part of this, and I shared it on Monday, like I know what happens when you don't put those process in place.
Yeah,
I know what happens when, as the leader, you don't model following the process. And I've experienced the pain from those pieces, right? Um, and you can see it in every company, right? Like it doesn't matter what company it is, if there isn't those set of checks and balances, that stuff can continue to happen. So it's how you learn from it, how you move on from it, how you continue to model it. That's really what makes that difference. So
for sure. Well,
start somewhere.
it looks like you've arrived at your destination.
Yeah,
Um,
just gonna sit and wait out the rain.
oh boy. I want to drop a few quick tips before you guys go. If you haven't started documenting your standard operating procedures, go over to servicealliancegroup.com, get signed up for the all access plan, because I don't I think our standard operating procedure library is probably one of the best offerings we have, and it's one of the things that has truly changed my business implementing those things. I put together a workbook for PSA. We're going to be uploading it to the site. I want to get Mike's help a little bit on making it look better and a little bit more in depth. um, but it's very simple. If you haven't started doing any of these SOPs and policies and things like that, you can start today, and just go through and make a list of every single thing that you do in a day. One day, running service calls, getting your parts, taking your core charges in, checking parts in that have arrived at the shop, scheduling calls, returning core charges. The list goes on, and just brain dump everything you can think of onto a piece of paper. This is what we did in the class that I did at PSA. And then on a separate sheet of paper, write out the level of importance for each of those tasks. Running service calls is super important in your company, because if you don't run service calls, you're not making money. So that should be a high priority task. And then lastly, write out which ones of what of that things that you do every day do you want to do, or and which of those do you want to delegate to someone on your team? And then lastly, which of those do you want to subcontract to somebody completely outside of your team? Things like bookkeeping, accounting, whatever it is. You might want to subcontract out your installs. Maybe you want to be able to offer installs, but you don't want to do them yourself. That's what I do. I don't touch installs. I got a subcontractor. I don't touch installs at all. The quote comes in, or the request comes in, the quote goes out, the quote gets approved, the appliance gets purchased, the appliance gets delivered, the appliance gets installed. I don't have to do a single thing. I make a little bit of money. We make a little bit of money. It's not a lot of money, but I don't have to touch a single thing. And the only reason that I don't have to touch a single thing is because I have policies and procedures in place. I have a team in place that knows that, hey, when the quote gets requested, I have to make sure that gets done. I have checks and balances to make sure that that quote gets done. So it's just stuff like that. That's a good place to start. Figuring out your day-to-day operations, and then start figuring out what you want to do, what you want to delegate to someone else, or hire someone to do, or pay a subcontractor to do. You can only do but so much things. And I personally believe that my time is best spent doing the things that, number one, I enjoy. Who wants to wake up and be miserable every day with what you're doing? Number two, I'm good at. And number three, are profitable. And for me, that is training, running service calls, and overseeing the day-to-day operations. That doesn't mean I'm in there answering phones. That means I'm making sure that all these things are getting done properly so that our business can run smoothly.
But
So,
TK, I can't sit and type this stuff down on a computer all day. What am I supposed to do about it? Notebook and pen.
yeah,
You got one in your truck. Just start writing down these things that you're doing day in and day out. You have stuff in your day that you are doing repetitively. Keep a notebook and pen and write it down. And then if you
absolutely.
need, you can pay someone on Fiverr to clean that up and stuff it into the Service Alliance Group template for you. You know, maybe $10 to have someone clean up all your process and put it in a way that makes sense within our template that we start for you. It doesn't have to be super hard. It's going to be hard if you don't start writing it down, if you don't start paying attention to it, because you do these things day in and day out. You're going to start forgetting. That was my biggest problem, is I was starting to write out these SOPs for, or train guys, right, on repairing appliances, installing whatever else we were doing. I had done it so long that I would forget steps. I would naturally do them, but to someone who hadn't done it that long, it's not a natural thing. And so
Yeah.
as you're doing them, write it down. Write down what you're doing. If you're going to the bank and you're depositing your money in certain accounts in a certain way at a certain time, or if you're paying bills at a specific time, you're paying ahead of time, you're paying extra, whatever, write that stuff down.
Yep.
so that you can continue to train it, continue to do it correctly, and that's where you're going to find the holes. If there's little things that need to be tweaked, hey, you know what? I've always done it this way, and I could save myself a little bit of time if I just did it, change this one step. That would save me some time, save me some frustration. Um, you won't know that unless you have it written down and you're looking through that. So
Yeah.
the
And
biggest thing is get out there and start doing it. Just start writing it down.
and I want to say this. I gave this tip. Goes along with what Zach just said. I gave this tip at PSA, and it's so simplistic but so powerful. Schedule it. Schedule time to work on this stuff. If you're sitting there like, oh, I don't have time to, I'm just so busy. Yes, you do, man. Stop making excuses. That's the haste. That's the haste talking in the back of your mind. Oh, I'm too busy. I got this. I need to do this. I need to do that. It Start small, man. Start small. Make a goal for this week, for this coming week, that you are going to get one standard operating procedure done. Or maybe you're just going to get your list done, but start small and don't allow it to overwhelm you, because it can be overwhelming. And then if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, if you're like, man, this is just too much, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. I have an open door invitation to anyone that needs help. I don't care if you're an all access member or just someone in the group. If you need our help, we're here for you. We'll do everything we can. Um, and we don't have all the answers, but man, I've been through all this stuff. I've struggled with all this stuff before, and that's why Zach and EJ and Mike and I are so passionate about this stuff, because we're either currently in it, going through it right now, or we've been through it and we've learned a crap load of lessons. But
Or
one of the
about
big
to go through it again,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
or making our third or fourth trip through it, for some of us. And we're all going through the same struggles. So, um, get you a schedule and figure out what's important and start working on these things. Whatever's the most important, get that done first. If you don't have a standard operating procedure for your service call, I suggest you start there, because we all know exactly how to run a service call. When Zach was going over that writing it down stuff, I literally, when I started doing LG compressors, I literally went out, because as I was learning, I was simultaneously training my Zach that used to work for me, that I miss. He was an awesome guy, but I literally sat down and wrote down every single, to the T of how I did an LG compressor, based off of how I was taught by Bill. And I still have that document to this day. I have the document of the step-by-step processes for doing an LG compressor. And do I sit there, if I do an LG compressor, do I sit there and pull my sheet out and read it? No, I know it. I know how to do it. But when it's time to train that next guy, guess who's going to have a copy and be able to go over it. And on his first one, he was like, oh man, I just blew the system out with nitrogen. What do I do next? I can't remember what I do next. Oh, well, let me just pull up this. Oh, okay. I remember. Now, boop, 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 dot, 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 check it off, and you're done. It's not that complicated. But those times of training are great times to review and change anything that needs to be changed. So anyway, I'm blabbing on and on. I got to get going. I got 6 calls to run today, and I'm excited. You got
have
any
fun,
closing
buddy.
thoughts, brother?
No, man, I just encourage everyone to get out there to get it written down. Just start the process. Um, Perfection doesn't exist, right? But procrastination sure does. And so if you're procrastinating because you're trying to get perfection, um, it's just not going to work. So get out there, get 80% there, and get moving. See what happens from there. You're 80% better today is better than 100% of garbage. So, just get out there and start doing it.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great day. Enjoy your weekend. Make sure to spend some time with your family this weekend because that's what's most important. All this business stuff is cool, but at the end of the day, family is what's most important. So,
Go
uh,
have go have some fun too. I get to work a concert at Soldier Field, so go have some fun. Go do something you love.
absolutely. Have some fun. Spend some time with your loved ones. And you will see Zach back on Monday, and I will catch you guys next week.
See you guys.
Peace.